Why does the older singing of the bel canto era, I'd say pre 1940s, maybe 1950s and 60s, 60s is pushing it. Why did the sound of the operatic singing before the 50s and 60s sound different than today for the most part? Now, of course, people are going to say, what about, Pavarotti? What about, you know, Domingo and Carreras and what that I love them. I love Corelli. I'm talking about the older generation of singers dating back to Caruso and just before Caruso and just after Caruso with Gilli. Why did those singers sound different than today? And the answer is they approached the voice from a different perspective in terms of technique. They did not sing with the same, or they did not sing the same way as the singers today are singing. It's just a simple fact of the simple fact of the matter is that today's singers cannot produce the same sound as much as they'd like to. With Mattinata, a lot of them have talked about, I've heard it on social media, I've heard it in the university system, they will talk about bel canto and they'll say, well, this is bel canto, or here's a bel canto exercise. But yet, when the singers sing, they don't sound like the older singers. They don't sound like Lauri Volpi. I mean, I know people that hold their phone up to the screen and say, look, this is what he's doing, but yet they sound nothing like him. It's because their technique is different. Their approach to the voice is different. And I'm trying to encourage a different perspective that is directly linked to those older singers. So L'Aurora, we don't push in the chest cavity. You don't hook. You don't embrace the as I hear people saying. There is no embracing the When you sing with it is a sign of muscular tension. So Mattinata, l'aurora di bianco vestita, la luce dischiude al gran sol. Di già con le rose sue dita, carezza dei fiori il tuo suol, commosso dallo fremito arcano. Yes, when you are singing any bel canto repertoire, and this is why the crossover from more commercial singing was able to be done by these singers. Carlo Buti is a perfect example. They were able to cross over because their technique permitted it. And why did it permit it? Because bel canto approach to voice building cultivates a very authentic sound, a sound that is unique to the individual singer. And if this strikes a chord in some of you or causes some anger and frustration, it's probably because you don't understand what I'm talking about, because you weren't taken through this specific approach that brings about a very specific sensation or a connection from the posture and the release of resonance through the posture. This is something that cannot be learned in a book. It's something that has to be taught through very specific instruction, and the sensations that I'm talking about have to be established in the body by an educated ear. And unfortunately, most of the teachers today do not have that ear, which is why we are trying to educate teachers and give them the tools to build voices in such a way that allows for an individuality that used to be very present to be brought back into the operatic singing and the operatic training of young voices. Now, we have to talk about authenticity, because authenticity, as it's understood in the more alternative health community, is considered an even higher vibration, an even higher energetic vibration than that of love. Now, between the ages of 0 and 5, kids are very, very authentic. They say exactly what they mean. Yes? And oftentimes, even if they feel bad, they'll give you a hug, a kiss, and they'll say, I'm sorry, but they're not going to take back what they meant. They were just being their authentic self. They were observing reality as it passed by them, and they made a comment. And to the adults around them, it seemed like maybe that was an inappropriate comment, but it was very, very authentic. Now, between the ages of 80 plus, people are very, very authentic. Everyone has that story of their older grandfather or their grandmother or their great uncle in his 80s or 90s or early, very, very early hundreds, 101, 102, who is extremely difficult to take out in public, very embarrassing, because he just says whatever it is that is on his mind. But that's because there's authenticity. He's not trying to be mean, he's just saying what he feels. Now, between the ages of 5 and 80, that means that people are very inauthentic. They're putting up masks. They're playing a role in their life, whether it be with their family, their friends, in their careers, that is inauthentic. Bel canto allows or facilitates an authentic quality to the voice. And just like with that 5 and under year old and 80 plus year old, even though those things they say are not always taken by the people that love them to be, something that is something that is appropriate in the situation, the people that they say it to oftentimes just dismiss it as, it's okay, I understand. You have to understand that authenticity is a very, very powerful energetic principle. When you cultivate authenticity in the voice, that sense of individuality can transfer over from the classical repertoire into the musical theater repertoire, into the more older, the older commercial singing repertoire very, very easily. And it doesn't sound like opera trying to be musical theater. Okay, so when I sing Mattinata, we're going to sing some musical theater later on, maybe Till There Was You or Because You're Mine. But when we sing Mattinata, we're always striving for simplicity in the tone and the crescendo and decrescendo that most people want today, the big loud sounds that happen through years and years of the voice being allowed to just exist in simplicity. And then you learn, once the connection between posture and release of resonance is built, you learn that like a faucet, turning the faucet to allow more water to flow out, by changing the posture, you allow more body to be released, dependent upon how much the folds can naturally withstand within their proximity. Because remember, we're trying to encourage from this breathing in through coperto, stopping the breath, and then releasing the sound. We're trying to encourage a closer proximity of the vocal fold, which of course would encourage more sound in the long run. But because there is weakness, because singers oftentimes aren't singing like this, in your students, the quality in the beginning is very, very weak. Over time, that sound will increase, and there will be greater control even though there's greater release. It is a very, very freeing sensation, but in the beginning it's a very, very worrisome sensation because you really don't have the control you're used to in the modern day voice approach. So what it really comes down to, when we talked in the beginning about this, we brought this whole question up as to whether or why the older singer is different than the newer singing. It's simply because the approach is different. Instead of muscling a yawn space in the back of the mouth to try to create a more mature sound, the older singers were breathing in through a specific shape being used as a tool to encourage more pharyngeal shape, but they would release it every time. They would never hold it with muscular tension. And over time, it learned to hold a more open position. They would also start from a closed position in the vocal folds, because then, naturally, the folds would learn to hold a closer position. Today's singers are muscling the folds together. To encourage more body, they understood that the squillo has to lead the body. If the squillo does not lead the body like the horse drawing the carriage, you're pushing body out before the squillo, and the squillo is the very first byproduct of sound. When the folds separate, that very first sound is squillo, and from squillo can emerge body over time once the squillo learns to manage the body. Okay, so all of these concepts are very, very different than what we're taught today. And of course, one of the most overlooked and underappreciated aspects of bel canto is the purity of vowel in the full spectrum of the range. There is no changing or distorting the vowel in the upper voice just because you're in the upper voice. Because guess what, singers and teachers? Everything is happening at the level of the larynx. So if you are muscling or distorting the vowel, yes, in the upper voice, it's still happening here. So why would you change the vowel of what's happening here? You know, the vowel being, the tongue being the muscle of vowel. Why are you changing the shape of the tongue and the embouchure to try to account for what's happening here? If there's muscular tension, you have to release it. You have to figure out why there's muscular tension. This should be something that's ingrained in the teacher's ear. And when you hear obviously, that is one sign that there is muscular tension. And that's why I have such a problem with this embracing of the because we don't embrace not in bel canto, at least. If you want to embrace in modern singing, fantastic. It's go ahead. But when we talk about bel canto, it is the highest form of singing there is. And of course, I've said this before, I will say it again, and that is because the vagus nerve connects the brain to the larynx to the heart. When we sing with the posture, we stimulate the vagus nerve. We therefore connect into the solar plexus, which is the seat of creation. And we sing truly from the heart, which is why it has been studied and shown that bel canto singing acts on the nervous system. This is why it is a very, very high energetic level of singing. A very difficult way to sing because it takes patience and it takes dedication. So one more time when I sing mattinata, l'aurora, l'aurora di bianco vestita, and you're not going to drive breath and sound out. You start from closure and you have to stay uninvolved with the vibrato. If it releases, great. If it doesn't, you have to be involved with the legato, not the vibrato. Già l'uscio ti chiude al gran sol, di già con le rose sudita, carezza dei fiori do suol, col mosso dal fremito arcano. Yes, everything is being released from the chest, but there is a connection between the mustache line, la maschera, and the chest. And this connection is built over time. So if you have any questions, of course, reach out to us. Hit the subscribe button if you like the content or you want to ask more questions, leave a comment. And as I was saying, you can visit us on our website for information about our courses, our workshops. We do have some upcoming events happening. You can find out about there. That is academyofbelcanto.com. You can always reach out to us at vocalmastery1@gmail.com if you have any questions or concerns. Of course, if you are arguing about the modern day voice approach compared to the old bel canto schools and you have no formal training in bel canto, I am not going to, I don't want to say waste my time, but I'm not going to have a lot of time to debate because it's just it's simply a different way of approaching the voice. 10 years ago, or no, 15 years ago now, when I approached this way of singing, or I started working with Dan, I did not know what I was getting myself into. It is very rewarding to sing in this way, but it does take time, it does take patience, and it is something that is hard to articulate, which is why I've taken so long to try and figure out a way to communicate these principles, even if they are a little more complex and difficult to understand. I do want people to have an educated understanding of bel canto and the benefits of singing with an older world approach. So again, if you have any questions, reach out to us. We are always welcome to answer your questions. Happy to answer them. And we look forward to seeing you in our next video.